Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Hang Up right here on the line. It's a call-in show. The number is 720-619-2288. If you are a theist, go ahead and start calling in now. If you're an atheist, hold off for a little while. If you think you're neither one of those or both, you should definitely probably call in to get some correction. I'm waiting for the SEC to announce that they will be investigating Donald Trump for insider trading. I don't know that they're going to, and I don't know that it could possibly be fruitful at all. But since taking over, he has implemented tariffs and backed off of them, and then increased them, and then backed off of them, and then added even more of them, and then tanked the markets. And then today, he backed off on those tariffs, putting in a 90-day pause. And after he announced the 90-day pause, because people were getting afraid and yippy, the markets started to return. As a matter of fact, the S&P 500 had its biggest increase since 2008. Now, it's worth noting that you don't really get credit for the biggest increase ever if you tanked it. And I would bet every dollar in my wallet, which this week is actually more than normal. There's at least two, that all of the talking heads at Fox News and the other suck-up networks will ignore the problems and say, see, we told you the president is a billionaire, genius businessman. We told you not to panic. We told you it was all going to get fixed, as if the tariffs worked, as if the plan worked. In reality, the only reason there's a rebound is because he paused those tariffs. I would bet every dollar in my wallet that they're going to just go, see? But if I'm pouring gasoline on a fire and you tell people, don't worry, that fire is going to go out, just hang tight, I don't get credit for running out of gasoline. And that's what happened. He couldn't realistically continue the tariffs, which everybody knew. He was simultaneously sending out the message that this was a bargaining strategy and that it wasn't. That these are fixed and final, and that it gives us some negotiating power, even though he's not negotiating. That he's the king of the art of the deal, but that art doesn't require any negotiating. The Supreme Court keeps protecting him, including with the man wrongly sent to an El Salvadoran prison. But imagine if you're Donald Trump and you're running for office, you remember all the stuff leading up to and including the inauguration, billionaires everywhere. Just here's 20 of the 30 richest Americans. Just boom, 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 boom. I don't know exactly how many were there. What did he have to do to get their support? I mean, he's not doing anything to really help business. The manufacturing infrastructure that would need to exist in the United States in order for us to stop relying on imports that are being tariffs will take years to build. And who's going to invest hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in building that infrastructure if the tariffs aren't going to stay in place? If you put the tariffs out there and everybody's like, okay, let's buy up some land, let's start building some infrastructure, let's start building some robot workers and get it so that we can make, circuit boards and everything else again. Nobody's going to be investing in that unless there's a good reason to think that the tariffs are going to stay in place, but he keeps pulling the tariffs out. So there will be no improvement to our internal ability to manufacture and produce goods. We will still have to keep importing, and everybody knows it. And if, in fact, we were to go kind of isolationist and pull aside from everybody else in order to avoid these imports, it would take the United States a decade or two to get back to being the sort of manufacturing-based economy that we once were. And there's no reason to think that any of that would be better than what we had when the economy was starting to recover just before Trump took over. What if in his meetings with the billionaires to get donors to support him, he said, look, when I'm elected, I'm going to use this plan and I'm going to set massive tariffs in place. And I want to let you guys know, don't panic. I need your help to not completely crash the markets. And you guys can all get rich. Well, you're already rich. You can get richer because you can sell things short and you can buy up stocks from the people who panic, because the billionaires can take risks. The billionaires don't care about a 401k. The billionaires don't care about the price of the pharmaceuticals that are being imported in order to treat the ill. All of the things that are day-to-day risks and costs for all the rest of us don't exist for that entire class of people. They're not worried about their 401k. They have the sort of expendable, disposable income and wealth that allows them to not care. For example, I don't buy lottery tickets, but every now and then when like the Powerball gets up to 800 million or something, my math skills go out the window and it's like, wow, the return on investment, expected return on investment for $1 is like $1.23 or whatever. Now I should pay $20 and get tickets. But if you're a billionaire, you could spend $20,000 every single week playing the lottery and have, I don't know, 1,000 times better chance of winning than I do. And you're not going to notice it. It's the same thing when, hey, I have a computer here that's breaking down. I can't just go shell out $4,000 or $5,000 to get a new computer, which is also going to cost even more with the tariffs. I've got to find a way to make this work, and I've got to find a way to sell things, and I've got to find a way to do all this. Elon can buy a brand new computer every day that's one of the best ones on the market every single day if he wants to. And then he can do, well, the first time he was playing Path of Exile, he paid somebody else to do it. But the other day, evidently, he was deciding to play for himself. And it became very obvious that this guy is not only just as stupid as I said he was, and just as not a gamer as we all knew he was, but embarrassingly slow and clumsy and awful at a game to where he was mercilessly mocked by people who actually know how to play the game. But it doesn't matter, because he could throw out that computer, throw out that account, set up a whole new account. He could buy Grinding Gear Games and own. I mean, I think the budget for PoE 2 was about $100 million, and the developers from Grinding Gear Games have just fucked up their game so bad this last week that the value of it's probably lower. Elon could probably buy it all and just gift himself whatever. This is, I know I'm mixing things here, but the point is, your life and my life are not remotely like a billionaire's life. And if I was a billionaire, well, I'd already be unethical, so we can set that aside. And I knew that Trump was going to be doing this tariff thing. What am I going to do? I'm going to watch the markets. As soon as the announcement goes in, I'm going to start shorting stocks. As soon as the market starts dropping and people start panicking, I'm going to buy up some of the ones that people are panic selling. And then, knowing Trump's going to have to stop this, he can't keep it going, then that starts to restore the market. And then you see a huge increase in the S&P 500. The economy's not better than it was. It's just, we took a big dump on the economy to drive out the little people, to drive out the people who can't afford that risk. The only people who are going to end up making money off this are the wealthy. And I don't know whether or not any of this was remotely intentional, but even if it was discussed ahead of time, it may count as some sort of insider trading issue. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. because he's a king. He was just doing what he's supposed to do as president, and that is trying to negotiate the best deals for us again. And if somebody is able to predict what's going to happen with the market based on what's obviously going to happen with the market, and they're in a position to benefit from it, that's what's going to happen. And nobody's ever going to be punished. And the billionaires are going to get more billionary. I mean, I could have taken every penny I have and still wouldn't have been able to short stocks and make money in this market. Is there going to be an investigation? Nah. And even if there was, he's above the law. There's no crime, especially if it's part of his official duties. And his official duties would include setting up tariffs. Well, that's a little debatable, as Congress should have been included. But I'm wondering, for all the Trump supporters out there who aren't billionaires, for all of the MAGA supporters out there who saw their 401ks tank, who don't even have a 401k and we're just dealing with inflated prices and the general panic. How are you feeling? Are you willing to just ignore it all? Oh, look, the market's bouncing back. It's just a little hiccup. But it's not like the tariffs are still in place. It's this plan wasn't working. This plan isn't working. This plan isn't working. Fuck, let's stop that plan. Thank you for finally stopping that plan. And then I guarantee you over the next 90 days, you're going to see a taper unless he announces that he's done with those tariffs. But he's not. He's increased the ones on China, and China's retaliating, and they are retaliating in a big way. It's a terrifying world, but we're so focused on the price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of computer chips, the fact that we don't have the infrastructure to make anything, the fact that the division of wealth, the disparity between the lower and middle classes and the billionaires, that gulf is widening. We're in this world where I'm baffled because it's so obvious that this is a game for the wealthy to accuse everyone else of doing what they're doing. I heard Elon Musk suggesting that the protesters at the hands-off stuff were paid by George Soros, while Elon was actively handing out $1 million checks in order to try to change a judge election. Thankfully, he failed. Out in the open. Every single thing that they accuse other people of doing is something they are doing. And if you don't see them doing it, it's because they're doing it in a way that you can't see it. It's constant. And it is obvious tactics that they've talked about openly. In the same way that Project 2025 is open, there's video of Trump talking about how he does better when the markets are tanking. Set aside the money for a second. Yes, we should absolutely investigate and look at the money. Even if you were someone who was wealthy enough to get wealthier in this situation, is the world better? Are human rights issues any better? Have we solved immigration problems? Have we solved drug problems? Have we solved the woke left mind virus problems? While they use the LGBTQIA plus community as a prop to terrify the fragile, toxically masculine douche nozzles out there that are advocating for this and celebrating. Ooh, I owned you liberals, ha ha ha. Drowning in your liberal tears, ha ha ha. People voting against their own best interest. The attacks that I see on a regular basis, on a daily basis, directed not just at me, but at all of my friends on the left, for merely daring, having the audacity to say, you know what? The other day was Asexual Awareness Day. And hi, all my ace friends. Cool. I think it's good for people to become aware that we need to talk about human sexuality in ways that accurately reflect the full spectrum of this, so that you don't keep ignoring the fact that there are bi people. Not everybody's just gay or straight. You don't keep ignoring the fact that some people are asexual, and that people need to understand about asexual people that they're not all the same either. And there's distinctions between asexual and aromantic. And this isn't just I'm a robot that does not want to have sex. There's more here. And yet you've got J.K. Rowling deciding to just take a dump all over the asexual community by saying, Happy International Fake Oppression Day to everyone who wants complete strangers to know they don't fancy a shag. Well, you fucking harpy. Thanks for letting us know you don't fancy other people expressing themselves when it's none of your damn business. None of these people did anything wrong. None of them. Mind your business, Karen. But don't get me wrong. When I called J.K. Rowling out, the first thing people were saying was, oh, do you not see the irony that you called her out for calling them out? No, that's not irony. See, when someone does something that is neutral or good, and you try to shit on them and say that they're bad, the person who calls you out for being shitty isn't being ironic. They're being just. They're being allies. They're being empathetic. They are being decent. The bare minimum basic human decency. Watching the world fall apart as they dangle terrifying fake boogeyman in front of them and pretending that the truth doesn't matter, that lies are okay, that we have a brilliant genius, very, very stable genius president, and that Elon Musk and Doge are actually uncovering waste, fraud, and abuse, despite the fact that there's zero charges or investigations of anything that is apparently fraud. All of this being done to prop up a Christian nationalist agenda that's spelled out there in Project 2025. So for the Christians who supported Trump, how are you doing? Is your world better? Does it make you feel good that some of those queers are a little more miserable? A little worse off? Was it worth tanking your own financial interest? Was it worth setting aside progress? Was it worth sticking your nose in on issues that it doesn't matter? Why do you care who somebody sleeps with? Why do you care what somebody wears? We literally have people submitting proposed legislation, not only that there's only two genders and whatever gets marked on your birth certificate, you're stuck with forever. But if you have, an M on your driver's license, then that picture better damn well look like a man, and you better damn well dress like a man, so that when you hold up your license and you show them, but it's about sports, no, it's not. It's about science. No, it's not. You don't have the fucking science on your side. You don't have this fucking sports stuff on your side. You don't have the ethics on your side. It's about bigotry. It's about people being mad that a black man was elected president. People being mad that homosexuals were allowed to marry. People being mad about every little thing that they were opposed to, and they picked their little religious bigot pocket and tried to make the world a better place. So yeah, are you better off now? I think everybody's better off financially today than they were yesterday, but it's only temporary. It's a bizarre world I find myself waking up in. And if you are someone who believes in the supernatural, if you're somebody who believes in those things that my guest and I are not convinced of. If you are a Christian or a member of some other religion, do you think God appointed Trump? And do you think he did it to make the world better or worse? Because there are some people that think that, Trump was brought in to usher in Armageddon, the doomsday folks. And there are others that think, oh, he's God's anointed who will bring us into a new era. Is this what you wanted? Is this what you think God wanted? And how would you know? Joining me this week from Skeptic Haven's Let's Talk and from these episodes and other things, Neil the 604 Atheist, how are you? How's your financial situation?
I am well, sir. I'm plodding along, like most people, check to check kind of thing, and doing all right, I guess.
Don't you wish he was your president?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I wish
listen,
Canada
we got our own
would
set of problems up here.
Yeah, tell us what's going on.
Well, we got a guy that I'm pretty sure is kind of Trump-esque. His name is Pierre Poilievre, and he's a conservative, and he wants to cut medical funding and all kinds of shit like that. And good thing is we also have Mark Carney, who, by the way, for people who don't know, Mark Carney was the only non-British person to go over to the UK and work with them on their financial situations during the Brexit ordeal. So it's quite an honor to be asked to do something like that to help with the Bank of England and stuff like that. So I think Carney is a better choice. I actually pulled up a statistics chart showing all the stuff that Carney has done through his lifetime versus Poilievre, and Poilievre's was like that big, and Carney's was like that big. So he's got a lot more experience, especially when it comes to times like this where finances are all over the board and we don't know what the hell's going on with the tariffs and yada yada. So I think he's a better choice for Canadians. I think he's leading anyways right now, but there are a lot of Canadians that are angry, like Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan. They're like, oh, we'll just go to the US. Well, all right, see you later. I highly doubt you will, but see you later.
There was, I half jokingly pointed out that I'd be thrilled to have Canada become the 51st state because of the number of electoral votes you guys would get, and Republicans would never win anything again. And then somebody pointed out that I don't have any good reason to trust voters in Canada that broadly. And I was like, okay, that's fair. And then I saw a map where basically Washington, Oregon, California, and most of New England just secede and become put the lower parts of Canada basically surrounding it. I was like, oh, that's an interesting map. I still got to get out of Texas before that's any good. I wonder though.
Well, we kind of want Minnesota too, because they're very Canadian-esque as well.
Yeah, you get Minnesota, Illinois. I mean, we just get the Finger Lakes and stuff. It strikes me as weird because when I grew up, I was a fundamentalist Southern Baptist Christian. And I had very particular views. I was anti-abortion. I was right-wing on any number of issues. But we were taught that the primary purpose of our life and the primary goal that we should be trying to achieve is loving people. It's up to God to ultimately judge them. And so I believed every homosexual was living in sin, and if they didn't change and repent, they were going to go in hell. But that wasn't my job.
Judgmental?
No. I believed that was just a true fact.
Gotcha.
There was no judgment on them as people. That was for God to do. And my job was to love them and point them towards Christ so that they would have an opportunity to stop being reprobate homosexuals. And in my head, there's nothing judgmental about that at all, because it's God that's judging. I'm just letting you know what God judged you as.
Right.
And so I was able to lie.
We often behave like our deities. Like our deities often have the same mental patterns as we do.
Yep. I was able to lie to myself and pretend like I was the loving one because I was able to not hold myself accountable for doing what it was just true. It's like, hey, you pick up a battery, there's a positive node and a negative node. That's just a fact. It's not a judgment. And there's people who are homosexuals, and God says if they act on that, and we made a distinction, Jesus Christ, we made a distinction between acting upon it and having the attraction. And it was the acting upon it that we were like, oh, that's bad. And we just ignored it, ignored the issue, the broader issues surrounding this. It's weird because I remember thinking those things and thinking that was loving. And of course, now it strikes me as anything but.
Yeah.
It's a very strange world I find myself in. We've got some callers, both atheists and theists calling in now.
Well, can I say something real quick before we talk?
Absolutely.
I don't know any of your viewers knows, but we have met in person on a few occasions, and I think you're a very loving person. So you had enough courage to let me into your house, for crying out loud. So
that's fair, but you know, that might not be me actually being loving. It might have just been I didn't want to be alone.
Oh, okay, that's fair too.
I'm sorry for all the extra messages. There was a prescription that was supposedly delivered and left on the porch, and Arden just let me know that it's not there.
Still not there.
And the prescription service is messaging asking me to rate their delivery person, and I'm like, I can't rate your delivery person until I actually find my delivery. So I am going to set all that aside because we've got a show to do. We've got theist callers. We have atheist callers. If you want to advocate for your supernatural positions, this is a great opportunity to do so, because you got two people here who don't currently believe, but who I suspect would both be willing to believe if you were to present a good reason, something that was an evidence-based argument, something we had overlooked. And so if you tell us why you believe and why you think we should believe, we can then either agree with you or not and have that discussion.
I prefer them to be able to demonstrate that their beliefs are valid.
Yeah, it would be good stuff. All right, let's jump into this with both feet. And Roger is calling from California. Roger's a theist who's currently, I guess, deconstructing in some sense. Who wants to know about the Trinity. How you doing, Roger? You're on with Matt and Neil.
I'm doing good. How are you?
Not great, but you know, I'm not going to complain today. What the heck?
I do have a question. I know I've heard the Trinity is a concept that has been introduced later on within Christianity. Is that
Wouldn't that be Catholicism, though?
It's so, in my view, the Trinity was essentially invented in about 325 CE or so. The concept existed a little bit before that in some sense, but there are recognized interpolations or forgeries within the Bible, or recognized and or suspected. For me, the concept makes no sense, and not a single minister or advocate for it has found any way to make it make sense at all. And it's like, I don't know why anybody would try and, you know, hang their shingle on this.
The reason I'm asking is I don't know if it's just me doing some sort of rationale, like post hoc or typology, but I have a notebook of all the studies that I did, and I have like a comparable passages between Old Testament and New Testament, which may not be the smartest thing because I don't think the Bible necessarily is inerrant. I have some issues with it. But
Good.
when
You should.
it pops up in the Old Testament, that's why I'm a little confused.
Sure. Like,
I mean, I don't want to go
Hold
through
on.
verse. I mean, unless you have time to go through verses, but
I was raised in the Jewish faith, so we're pretty much on the Old Testament. I don't recall ever hearing much about a Trinity in the Old Testament.
that's why I'm confused, because I don't know if I'm just using like typology where words sound like other words. I have my Bible, but like I can bring up like Zechariah 12:10.
Zechariah
Well,
10. Okay, I've got it handy.
Yeah, 12:10.
Okay. It says, and I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplicants, and they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son, and shall be bitterness for him as one that is bitterness for his firstborn. That doesn't say anything at all about a Trinity.
yeah.
So that wouldn't compare to John 19:34-37, or like I said, am I just looking for patterns?
Well, we are natural pattern seekers, so that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I'm just.
But the only thing in John that maps to is the pierced, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, I don't see anything in that Zechariah verse about a Trinity, but one of the things you got to remember is that when you have a body of work, a body of scripture that existed prior to whenever Jesus purportedly existed, the authors of those stories are relying on those things. If you have a particular concept of a Messiah and you think this person is a Messiah, then you're going to find ways to make it fit. So the author of Matthew not only seemed to try to make Jesus fulfill every prophecy he could think of, he included prophecies that don't exist anywhere in the Torah or the Tanakh. And I guess what I'm saying is that passage in Zechariah, which I read right off the top, what in there in any way reflects the Trinity?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I think it's just the verbiage. That's what I'm saying. It might be a typology, because like, because like even in Exodus it says I am who I am, and then it's repeated again in John 8:5-8. But like I said, this is my understanding too is the original language was in Hebrew, and it's translated into Greek. The other issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
So no, I just I don't. I know.
Well, I didn't hear anything that points to a Trinity in which you spoke there, so I'm kind of at a loss for that one.
I thought I have a list of all the. I don't want to go through every single one, but I have.
I kind of don't want you to go through every single one either. So
Yeah. So I just was, I'm just a little confused. It's been, I would say, a year, and I'm having a hard time. I think I'm just holding on to things.
I mean that can be, and we don't have any way of knowing, and you may not have any way of knowing. But here, for me, there's nothing in that passage that mentions the Trinity. But to whatever extent that passage in Zechariah may reflect things that are reported later in John, we have no reason to think that those things actually happened or that they're a direct tie. And what I can say is that apart from a handful of Jews generally don't think that Jesus fulfilled messianic prophecy. The traditional Jewish views about who the Messiah would be and what he would be doesn't match up with Jesus. It's only a respin, which is why you still have Jews and Judaism. And it's tied to this notion that we built a new religion off of an offshoot of an older religion. So of course you're going to see similarities. And if you want to sell your new religion as the fulfillment of a previous one, you then intentionally include things that harken back. It's the same reason that, Islam goes back to the Abrahamic God. It gives you some starting cred right off the bat, and then you get to say,
right,
they got part of it right, but then they screwed up, this other thing. And now we've got the new message. We've got the correct message. And it's the same thing.
The final word.
Yeah. The same thing that Mormonism tried to do in some regard.
Yeah, I was going to say that, too.
Yeah. And so for me,
it's funny because,
no, I'm just saying, instead of looking at this and going, are these two things connected? Did this, is this actually the case? You would need evidence to show that they are. Instead of looking for reasons to give it up, you should be looking for reasons to maintain it. And absent good reasons to maintain it, you'll find that you can't.
No, yeah.
So earlier, before we spoke with you, Matt was saying that you are currently deconstructing. Did I hear that right?
Yes. So it's funny because of all the conversations I've had with other atheists and other religions. It was a book that I read. I don't know if you're familiar with Chet Remo. He wrote a book called Skeptics versus True Believers, and in this book, it's basically a credulity test, like true or false questions. And I took the test, and it's like, why am I allowing these false claims? Like, I don't believe in aliens or Bigfoot, but I'm accepting, humans are created by God. So that is like, that's what pushed me to start really questioning.
Well,
it's
wouldn't
like a series
God have
of
created
20,
aliens?
20 questions. Yeah, and that's the thing. There's that, yeah, and that. And then I'm like, well, yeah, that has been brought up in my way of thinking too, as well. And then I guess aliens don't get salvation. But
we don't know. We've never actually met any, so we can't talk to them about it yet.
I mean, yeah, and then like ESP. I mean, it's very bizarre because I do magic too. So I'm like, why am I accepting like someone can get solved in half? Why? How come I don't believe that? But I believe, Jesus walked on water.
Yeah.
So yeah. So
do you believe
the lead singer of the Cars in the movie or in a video?
And I was going to say, do you believe that Dynamo walked on water? Because he did that on the Thames, and I don't think it was supernatural.
Oh yeah.
No, I agree.
So
I was saying
setting aside the potential
band Cars. Sorry.
Oh no, Rick
Ocasek. Yes.
Yep.
Walked on water in the swimming pool in the video for magic.
To be fair.
Oh yeah, I've seen the Masked Magician do that too.
Yeah. But setting aside coming up with explanations, let's imagine for a second that the stories in the Bible about Jesus are reasonably accurate retellings of people's observations. And so someone saying, I saw him walk on water. Hume would point out that you have to ask yourself, is it more likely that he actually walked on water in a miraculous sense, or that he was engaged in deception, or that the people who viewed it were deceived? And then of those, he doesn't say accept the lesser miracle. He says reject the greater miracle, because at no point are you necessarily in a position where you have sufficient evidence to warrant accepting any of those explanations, but you should definitely reject the greater miracle. And by definition, the supernatural is always the greater miracle. And so until such time as somebody demonstrates that the supernatural exists, that it can interact with the natural, and it can do so in a detectable way, nobody has any justification for believing that there is a supernatural cause, whether in fact there's a supernatural cause or not.
Not to mention, any time they do claim the supernatural can interact with the natural world, the word supernatural literally means outside of nature. And every time that they've tested for it with controlled testing, it's failed every single time.
Yeah, well, yeah. And I guess I could bring up, like, when someone says it's supernatural, how would they know? Right?
Yeah. Quite
That's
often,
right.
people say, oh, that's supernatural, just meaning I can't think of a natural explanation. And saying I can't think of a natural explanation is independent from whether there is one. And so, it's like saying, what color of red is that? Oh, I can't think of the names of any of the red colors, therefore it's blue. I mean, it just, you can't get there from here.
To me, it's like a question. It's like a silly question. It's like going all the way to the North Pole and saying, which way is north?
Yeah. That's even better. We'll just leave it there. Roger, any other questions we can help with? I'm just thinking the biggest help is that you should keep asking yourself, do I have a good reason to believe this? Rather than saying, do I have a good reason to stop believing this?
Well, I've heard you talk about hell too, but I think that's terrifying. But I understand your take on that. Is why should I not believe, or why am I not scared with other hells? So
yeah. I mean, should we be seeking the best heaven or avoiding the worst hell? What if those aren't part of the same religion?
Right.
That is all. While it's frustrating, I'm no longer afraid of monsters under my bed. I'm no longer afraid of ghosts, demons, boogeymen. I'm not afraid of the chupacabra. I'm not afraid of any of the things that I don't have good reason to believe. And that's really liberating. But also what it does is it puts even my fear in perspective, where fear shifts from being an irrational response to the unknown to a rational response to demonstrable threats. I'm afraid of the government. I'm afraid of the authorities. I'm afraid of the oligarchy. I'm afraid of the people who can marginalize all of us, take away our rights, and relegate us to a shit existence. That terrifies me. The notion of a hell, there's nothing I can do about it, even if it's real. And as soon as somebody convinces me that it is real and there is something I can do about it, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree with them. I think it's much more reasonable to be afraid of the things that are currently going on than any described version of hell that I've ever heard of.
Right.
And there are people, for example, who are terrified of snakes. I'm not one of them. And yet there are snakes that I will not handle, not because I'm afraid, but because I recognize the real risk. And the important thing is to know the difference. But anyway, you were getting ready to say something. I'm sorry, Roger, go ahead.
Oh, I just was wondering how long. I I've been, like I said, this has been about a year. Does this, I guess for some people, it takes years and years and years to finally leave.
Yeah.
It can. I've spoken to many about it. It certainly can. And I'll tell you a secret. Well, it's not really a secret. One of the longest lingering effects of being in, especially in the Abrahamic faiths that have a hell, is letting go of that. That's one of the things that can linger for a long time.
All right. Thanks for your time. Let me get back to, I know it's probably off topic, but
no, you're fine.
The current,
you're fine.
Current affairs.
I also recommend reaching out. I also recommend reaching out to recoveringfromreligion.org. We do fundraisers for them, but they're not going to try to talk you out of your religion. They're just going to talk to you about the subject, and you can benefit from other people who have gone through similar things. And wherever you end up, that's where you end up.
Yeah, that's why I'm calling too, because I figured that there's not much of a community for people. Like when I have questions and doubts, automatically I'm getting you weren't a true believer, you weren't a true Christian. It's all right to doubt, I guess, but then once it goes so far, it's right. Off the grid. It's like, it's off the table.
That's one of the things with recovering from religion. It's not just a hotline. There are meetup groups for people in your position.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome, Roger. Hopefully you keep questioning and keep doubting and you find your way free from what I consider to be a harmless belief system, my friend. Or harmful. Pardon me.
Yeah, harmful. I was like, oh my God. Right off the bat, Neil's going to call something harmless that I think is pretty harmful. I think, though, that's a great point, in that in much the same way I had a confused understanding of love and a skewed perspective of my own thoughts. The notion of whether or not you're doing something good for good or oblivious to the harm you're causing is an important thing to investigate. You know, is what I'm doing actually making the world better? And if the people who are, if we define, like, I think most people want to make the world better, but some people have a different definition of, some people have a different definition of what is better. For some people, it's better if, you know, all these people that I don't like just go away. It's better if I don't, you know, it reminds me of I love flipping some of the common phrases on their head, which is like, you know, I don't mind heterosexuals. I just wish they'd stop rubbing it in our faces. That sort of respin on that gets people to understand that the normative isn't necessarily correct or beneficial. It's still a skewed perspective, because the norm just means what the average person or the majority are going to think, and they can all be wrong.
Absolutely. And we've gone through many cycles of our history where something that was normal is now no longer normal. Like if you were a thief and you got caught stealing, they would cut off your hand. You don't do that anymore. Well, at least not in civilized areas anyways. If you can even call them civilized areas.
We have Art's calling from Pennsylvania. Pronouns are he, him. Art's a theist that wants to talk about whether or not Christianity is inherently fascist. Welcome, Art. You're on with Neil and Matt.
Well, thank you, Neil and Matt. Yeah, I tuned in when you were talking about the social situation, and I have some ideas. Maybe you'll be interested. Maybe you'll like them. Maybe you won't. And that's what I called in to share. Okay. So we begin with a God who is a person, what I call a superhero God, outside of the universe, person. Okay. Now we begin with that. Well, he's a person.
Hold on 1 second.
Sorry.
Hold on 1 second. Art?
Yeah.
If he exists outside of the universe, then he doesn't exist inside the universe, correct?
Yeah, no. I'm explaining how I'm not saying this is true. I'm saying this is a line of thought that I think explains why Christianity can be inherently fascist. I'm not arguing that this is the case. I'm saying this is believed.
Okay, carry on.
It just okay.
But
So
I would say that I'm not convinced that that is an accurate assessment of Christianity's take on God, because when I was a Christian, God was not a superhero person that existed outside of the universe. God was the all-powerful foundation of the universe that permeated both inside and outside of the universe.
Well, our Father who art in heaven, a lot of people would understand as a person who is outside of the universe. But yeah, I mean,
well,
there are a lot of ideas of God.
If you take one verse and ignore everything else that's in there, sure, but you don't get to do that and say that you're summing up Christianity.
Okay, well, let's say I'm summing up I mean, Christianity is huge. I'm not summing up. Let's say I'm summing up a strand of Christianity. I mean, some people do believe, I think you'd agree, that God is a person outside of the universe. And I just want to show how that leads, I think, to a kind of culture which is very amenable to fascism. That's all I'm trying to do.
Well, a culture that's amenable to fascism isn't fascism.
Okay, so let's revise it to amenable. I mean, I think historically Christianity has often supported authoritarian, right-wing.
Yep, I would agree.
So, there was Hitler, there was Franco, there was Mussolini. I mean, but anyway, but yeah, okay, Christianity is huge, and what I'm saying, I think, only applies to a part of it.
Okay. I don't know that we're anything, and I don't mean this insulting. This is an obvious thing that when you have any sort of system that relies on authority, of course it's going to lend itself to something like fascism, but the Bible itself has particular statements about all leaders are God appointed and render under Caesar that which is Caesar's, and a number of views that don't merely, aren't fascist. So I guess I'm confused as to what the point is, because to me, it's a big no duh that authoritarian religions lend themselves to authoritarian political systems.
Okay, well, there's 3 or 4 more steps to make the point, but I don't know how to. Yeah, go ahead.
I think we got there in one step.
All right, well, that's fine. If you don't want to hear the rest, that's fine. I mean, maybe you're right. I don't know what to tell you.
I'm just trying to figure out. I mean,
well, let me make a few more points, and then maybe it'll be clearer. I mean, because I've only started.
Okay, right? It's just you started with things that were either obvious or wrong, so I had to jump in to ask about it.
Okay, fine. Okay, so you've got a person outside of the universe. Being a person, God has desires. God wants us to do certain things and wants us to avoid certain things. How are we to know what God wants us to do and not do? He's out there. We're here. He has a special book. Oh, great. There's a special book. But the book is very difficult to understand. You need a special clergy to tell you what the book really means. And this is
no, you don't.
Where I think, well, okay, maybe you don't need, but a lot of people accept what their clergy says about the book. You're right. I mean, you can read the book on your own. That's true.
That's the whole Protestant Reformation.
Well, my point is, Matt, is that when a 5-year-old child is told that this is the word of God, and then you open the book and they see the word serpent, and they're told it means Satan, they're basically being told, don't believe your eyes, believe clergy. And I think that lesson maybe carries over, and maybe,
no.
In other words, you're training the child to believe not their own eyes, but what they're told.
No.
No?
When a 5-year-old child like I was when I walked down the aisle at the revival and accepted Jesus into my heart. Here's the story in Genesis about the serpent and the portrayal by some religions that the serpent is in fact Satan. At no point did it enter into my head, trust the clergy. The only thing that entered in my head is, oh, here's a story about an evil being trying to corrupt humanity and so that they don't follow the good being. But in any case, I mean, clergy isn't mentioned in there, and clergy isn't a requirement for any of this. But even to the extent that you might be teaching someone to trust people who know more about these things than you do, that's not fascism. I think you are taking really isolated, simplistic bits of this and trying to spin it into something that it may or may not be.
Well, maybe you're right, but there's a lot of examples. I mean, Jesus, what is it, Matthew 5, says in the clearest possible terms, don't take oaths. You can show that to most Christians, or a lot of Christians, and you'll ask them, is it okay to take oaths? And they'll say yes. And then they'll give you something that probably their preacher told them. Or if they're unsure, they'll go to their preacher, and they will neglect if you believe that Jesus is God and this is God's word, then those lines in Matthew are God talking to you directly, quoting himself in his own book. And I'm sure you know the verses as well as I do, where he says, let your yea be yea, your nay be nay. There are a lot of adults you could go to and say, hey, you shouldn't take oaths, show them that, and they're going to not believe their own eyes. They're going to say, wait a minute, they're going to go to their preacher and they're going to come back with some explanation of why it's really okay to take oaths if you join the military, if you're in court, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you have people that they say they believe this is, now, it's like you can show them stuff and it doesn't do any good. And I think that's,
what does that have to do with fascism?
Huh? Okay, maybe maybe the idea is these people are told not to believe what's in front of their own eyes. Now, do you think there are some MAGAs today?
Where? So
who are?
Oh yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Neil.
I was going to say, the MAGAs are doing exactly that, sure, but I still don't understand. I don't get the whole point to this call. I guess I'm not sure because I'm not seeing any.
I mean, yes,
fascism is authoritarianism and whatnot to like an nth degree, but and sure, Christianity could play into that for sure, but so could some other religions because most of them are male dominated and authoritarian, anyways. So,
okay, well,
have you bothered, Art?
Yeah,
have you bothered to look into the apologetics that describe Matthew 5:33 through 37 at all?
Yeah, and I think they're bullshit. I mean,
okay, what expertise do you have in Greek, Aramaic, and the relevant history to determine that the apologetics are bullshit and that your view of this is that it's a prohibition against any sort of oath and that people would be shocked by this?
I feel I don't need that.
Yeah, I know you feel you don't. I know you feel you don't need that, which is why your arguments will fall on deaf ears constantly because you are wrong. The traditional view, let me finish. The traditional view is that this statement of "do not swear by anything, any god in heaven, etc." is a reflection of "do not take the Lord's name in vain." And you shouldn't need to swear on gods and things because you should be honest. You should let your yes be yes and your no be no. You should not be cagey. You should not be deceptive. The notion that you have the correct understanding and the mass of theologians who have studied this are wrong, you could be right. But you have to go do the work to do that. And when you say you don't feel you need that, I will dismiss your point just as quickly as every theist will.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, can I respond?
I guess.
Of course.
Okay. You've got world-class scholars who spend their life, and they do a translation. Now, if Christians don't want to stand by the translation, and they say, oh, wait a minute, let's go back to the original Greek, and then if you get them there, let's go back to the original documents that don't exist. That's going down a rabbit hole that I don't want to do. And I don't think I should have to do. If scholars have spent their life translating this, and when
what do you care, Art?
Bible,
what do you care, Art? What do you care? You're ignoring the scholars. You think the scholars are bullshit.
I'm not ignoring the scholars. If I
you literally said you thought the apologetics from the scholars was bullshit, didn't you?
That's what I heard.
Yes, because
okay. So why are you shut up? Why are you out of convenience going back to the scholars?
I'm going back to what the people who say the Bible mean. They mean something you can hold in your hand and you can read in English. If they're not willing to stand by that,
sir.
and they go down this rabbit hole.
No, sir. No, sir. You and I have had conversations like this before where you call in with some esoteric, I don't give a fuck what the expertise or what the actual facts are. I have some grand insight into Christianity and what it's done to the world. You and I have had this conversation before, haven't we?
Not this one, no, but we have talked before.
Yeah, in a very similar, not about these particular verses, but you keep thinking that you have these insights despite having no knowledge or understanding and no appreciation for the history or the scholarship. You read something in English and you want to take it on its plain face of your understanding and say, if there's any difference or any problem, that was because the scholars got it wrong. This should be available to everybody. And there's a great argument to be made there that God should make sure that his word is clear in English and every other language. But all of that is irrelevant to what Matthew 5, 34, 33 through 37 means, both in its traditional sense and what the best understanding of its original sense may have been. But if you're just going to sit there, you're just like the Christians who go through trying to find verses to fit what you see in the world and claiming prophecy's been fulfilled. Only you're doing it saying, hey, I see fascism. The book's telling them don't believe your own eyes. By the way, there's way fucking better verses you can go to. Lean not on your own understanding, that specifically suggest the sort of things like don't believe your eyes, rather than this tap dance you've got with regard to serpents and gods outside of space. You don't know what you're talking about. The case that you're making is irrelevant, pointless, and wrong.
So when Christians say read your Bible, unless you can read Aramaic and Greek, it's no good. It's no good because you want to read something in English.
Okay, I'm going to mute you. It's time for you to go to school. You ready? Buckle up. Hi, I'm Matt, the former Christian. And when I was a Christian, I didn't say read your Bibles and expect people to understand it all on their own. The Bible was God's word to us, to all of us. And when I suggested that people read their Bibles, it was with the guidance of the Holy Spirit. Don't pretend you understand what is going through Christians' heads when you fucking weren't one, when you haven't bothered to interact with them, when you haven't bothered to study the scholarship at all. You are being hypocritical because you think that you have a good understanding of this when you demonstrably do not. And this isn't the first time we've done exactly this, not with the same subject. You are sitting around trying to find ways to poke holes in Christianity, and it's a mess. Don't act like you understand what Christians can do. That's called a straw man, when you pretend, when you prop up a fake Christian in order to knock it down. I want to talk to actual Christians. It says here, Art, that you are a theist. What God do you believe in?
You and I have been there before, and I'm not going to go there again right now because...
Goodbye.
Matt, I think you need these.
I need. Oh yes, gangsta. We got a couple atheist calls to go to. Waiting to see if we get some theist calls to call in. But the call screeners can put a note in. Art calls in and labels himself a theist. Sorry, Art calls in and labels himself a theist so that he can shit on Christians without actually understanding or caring or having any understanding of it. In the future, Art, when you call in, you either need to call in and say you're an atheist or you're a theist and are here to defend your views. I don't need theists who are non-Christians calling in to rag on Christians, just like I don't need Christians who are non-Jews to call in and rag on the Jews or anything else. You don't know what you're talking about. We've done this before.
Yeah, and I can recommend some people to go talk to. I've got some friends that are scholars in the Bible, so like Dan McClellan and Kip Davis and whatnot. You can go and talk to those guys.
And weirdly,
they
one of them's
for
a
years
Mormon.
to know what they know. Well, yeah, he is what he is. But
it boggles my mind that somebody can. Anyway, all right, here we go.
No, I'm on board with that too.
Flabbergasted's calling in from California. Flabbergasted is an atheist to ask questions about the philosophical arguments for God. So, Flabbergasted, what's going on?
Hey, Matt. Hey, Neil. How's it going? I'm basically, just calling to. I've been debating with some theists lately, and you hear a lot of these philosophical arguments for God, and I kind of have an understanding of it, and I want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly and I'm representing these positions accurately. And I figured you're a good person to ask about that. And I'm not sure about you, Neil, but hopefully you got some feedback for me too.
Neil will have feedback for sure.
Awesome.
All right, let's do it this way. Let's do it this way. Because we may hit several of them, let's start with the one you either think you're most wrong about or the one you think you're most right about, because that could save us time either way, and we'll do them like one at a time and end when we need to move on.
Yeah, and if you need to move on by any means, just let me know. I know my thing's not as fun as some of the others.
Well, there are no theists right now on hold. There's one other atheist on hold. There are no theists on hold because evidently nobody wants to call in and actually defend the gospel of Jesus Christ or Judaism or Islam or Scientology, which is weird because I think that's theistic and not or anything. Evidently, Neil is terrifying and has scared off all the theists. So you've got the floor, Flabbergasted.
All right. So I see a bunch of people coming in with a lot of different, well, not coming in here, but coming in with a lot of philosophical arguments for God. And kind of the way I'm understanding it is that a philosophical argument for God is in its best situation, when we're talking about just a philosophical argument on its own, defining a God into existence kind of situation. Would that be a fair characterization of that approach, or is it doing, or can a philosophical argument be doing more than that?
Philosophical arguments can definitely do more than that. There are some arguments, like the ontological arguments. I think that those merely define God into existence. Anything where there's like a God of the gaps, or where it's an appeal to necessity for logic or reality or morality. But there are arguments that are not just defining God into existence. They're, hey, we need a first cause. If it turns out we need a first cause and God is that, then that's not just defining God into existence.
But wouldn't the assertion that the assertion that there is something that needs to predate the universe and that thing is a God be doing that without actually appealing to anything outside of just the philosophical argument itself, like without coming in with anything empirical or evidentiary based?
That's not the same thing as defining something into existence, though. Having an argument. Yeah, go ahead, Neil.
I'm confused when you say that. I don't know if that's really defining something into existence. They're making an argument for something they already believe exists, and they're just making the argument to sort of try to solidify their position with these arguments.
Okay. So I'm using the phrase defining into existence incorrectly here. That's understandable.
They're sort of trying to define their reason for believing his existence, in other words.
Okay.
So one thing is to consider motivations.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that in the sense of, is the argument being designed to actually explain an observation, or is the argument being constructed in order to justify a conclusion?
Which I think most of them are the latter ones. The latter statement you made, anyways.
Okay. So I'm philosophy is not my jam, and so I think that's why I'm struggling with this so much. So in that case, it's either if it's not going to be a defining God in existence, then it's a presupposition, or kind of trying to assert after the fact, almost like you already have the belief and you're trying to defend that, but you don't actually come in with anything more than just a logical
more assertions
syllogism to try and justify that, or maybe logical syllogism I use wrong there, but
well,
okay.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there.
Sorry,
they have the belief to begin with, and you're right. They're creating these philosophical ideas to define, or not define, but defend what they already believe, and to try to possibly convince other people that what they believe is true because here, this, and this, or X, or whatever, right? So they come up with their little philosophical ideas and posit them out there, and some people bite, some people don't.
Okay.
Yeah, it's weird to try and put some category on this, because an argument is just an argument, and in simplest terms, it's judged on its validity, which is about the structure. If you put true premises in, do you get a true conclusion out? If so, then that structure is valid. The second consideration is whether or not it's sound, and that's often described as, are the premises true? However, from the standpoint of reasoning, whether or not the premises are true is a separate issue from whether or not you are convinced they are true. And so if you have an argument that is valid in structure and you accept both of the premises, it is irrational for you to reject the conclusion. So if you say, hey, everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence, the universe began to exist, therefore the universe had a cause for its existence, that argument is structurally valid. And so the question is it true that everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence? And is it true that the universe began to exist? So now you start evaluating the premises. I don't know that there's much value in saying, so sorry. I don't know that there's much value in saying, ooh, that's a philosophical argument instead of an empirically evidenced argument. Because in reality, all of the arguments, by the fact that they are arguments, are going to be philosophical in nature, and whether or not you accept the premises should be based on whether or not there's good reason to, either another argument that you accept and leads to that, or empirical evidence. And so it'd be much better to draw a distinction between presuppositional arguments, where they are presupposing a God to explain logic or morality or the universe or whatever else, in order to fill in a gap. Whether the gap exists or not is independent. That's what they're doing. Make a distinction between the presuppositionalist arguments and evidentialist arguments, where they construct an argument and try to support or try to present supporting evidence for it. And so if they are saying evolution is false and it's because we found rabbit fossils in the Precambrian, well, if we actually had found that, that would be a piece of evidence that may or may not debunk a particular thing. But it's still just, I mean, they're all philosophical arguments. I think we need to be more careful about evaluating arguments independently, because not even all ontological arguments are the same. Not all moral arguments are the same. There's not one cosmological argument or even one type of cosmological argument. And that's what makes it difficult. And so we can't do they're just defining God into existence, because they may not be, or they might be. It depends on the argument. You have to judge them independently.
Okay. So, I guess my other question on that would be, if someone made an argument that was valid and sound, I accepted it, and it was a philosophical argument that proved, I feel like at best, in my experience anyways, that is the best that's capable of demonstrating would be like a deistic God. I don't see, and I'm wondering if I'm correct in my understanding of this, that I don't see how a philosophical argument could then also like bridge that deist to theist gap. Or is that just my understanding of how the way I'm talking about philosophical arguments? Am I just being disingenuous here?
I don't know how you can say that someone presented a valid and sound argument, but you don't see how a valid and sound argument could ever do more than X. You are both saying that you've received a valid and sound argument and then rejecting it based on what it demonstrates. That is by definition irrational. If the argument is valid in structure and you accept the premises, whether the conclusion is therefore God exists, therefore the sky is blue, therefore a deistic God exists, therefore Jesus Christ is Lord of Lords and King of Kings, doesn't matter. If you accept the premises and the structure is valid and you don't accept the conclusion, you're irrational on that topic.
Okay, I think I may have presented my point incorrectly then, because I agree with you wholeheartedly in what you said. And so I think I presented my thoughts poorly. It seems to me that
all the time. Don't worry about it.
A philosophical argument, at best, seems to be capable, at best, of demonstrating like a deistic God. But I don't see how you can use a philosophical argument to bridge the gap between a deist and a theistic God. And I don't know how you've managed. I kind of feel like there's. I don't know how you've. Clearly.
I don't know how you've managed to come to that conclusion. That how do you know what the limits of a philosophical argument that you've never heard are?
No, that's right. You're right. See, this is why I'm asking you. Because if I relied on my own ability to understand this stuff, I'd be really lost.
It's
okay.
I mean, I don't see that there's. I mean, outside of the limits of logic itself, that we have no way of verifying or debunking identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle, that kind of foundation. Outside of that, I don't know that you can say anything. If there's an argument that's valid and you accept the premises, you should accept the conclusion. And if you're like, yes, but I won't do it if it's something more than a deistic God, then you're irrational. Now, you could be right. You could probably, what may be happening is that you may not be familiar enough with the various logical fallacies and what the limits of epistemology are to demonstrate with empirical evidence. And so you might be, instead of talking about the limits of argument, you might be talking about the limits of human inquiry. Like, I don't have the ability to look outside of the space-time continuum in which I inhabit. I don't have the ability to travel back in time and make a list of all the candidate explanations for the first life form. And I think one of the things that struck me that made it very clear to me, part of what was wrong with what you said is this. I don't think it's possible at all to demonstrate a deistic God, because a deistic God, by definition, does not interact with reality in any detectable way. And so from an empirical standpoint, if it doesn't interact with reality, then there cannot be evidence for it, and therefore there cannot be an evidence-based argument. And so while you're sitting there saying you think it's limited to only demonstrating a deistic God, I think the deistic God is too vague and is definitionally not supported. You know, it's like saying it could only prove an unfalsifiable God. No, it can't. Nothing. If it's not falsifiable, you can't show that it's true or false.
Okay. I think I see what my problem here is. I feel like I might be trying to give more credibility to the arguments that I'm seeing and being like, well, I suppose if I grant that it is possible that you could demonstrate a deistic God here, then we run into this problem. But I'm almost granting too much in what I'm allowing there, what I'm allowing here. So I end up getting caught in this way of trying to justify my granting of that, and I'm losing myself in that. Is that? At the end of the day,
I would say you're giving it far too much credit, personally, especially like Matt said earlier, a deistic God which doesn't interact with us is kind of hard to prove either way, isn't it? It doesn't interact. So how the hell will we know? Okay, how could we demonstrate that empirically?
Hey, I found the thing that is hiding from us. I found the God that's hiding from me. Yeah, it's
all right.
It is one of those things. Now, it could be that some God exists that people aren't aware of, and it has a completely different definition. And then the discussion is going to be: does it count as a God? What is the bare minimum of criteria that would qualify something as a God? If there was some, advanced alien intelligence that could create and fundamentally alter reality, I mean, those are godlike powers, but does that mean that race is a god? When you look at something like the MCU, Loki is a god, and actually way cooler and way more powerful than anything I've seen from any of the proposed gods that they're supposedly involved with our reality. And yet I don't count him as a god, not in the sense of classical theism. It's like there's an MCU category of super, super powerful beings. And then on top of them, it'll be, like Franklin Richards and whoever else. And whatever the power curve is. You get Eternity and the rest of them, and maybe the Tribunal, who knows, the Watchers. We're trying to categorize things. And when it comes to gods, generally speaking, with gods, the God of classical theism is generally defined as the omnimax God. It's all powerful, all knowing, all benevolent. That is the God of classical theism. And underneath that are the Abrahamic God and those things, because they qualify in that category. If there's another category of God, somebody would need to define it. And if somebody said, hey, I have another category of God, and it is just anyone smarter than you, all of a sudden I immediately believe in a God, because I know for a fact there are people who are smarter than me. Fuck tons of them. I'm going to be doing a show later this month with someone who's undeniably smarter than me, and is on our network all the time, and that's Erica. I mean, how do you not feel intimidated? Amazing. It's great, but Erica's not a god. I love her to pieces. Not a god, in the sense that we tend to debate gods.
Yeah,
and so we have to be careful about what we're defining and what argument we're evaluating. And while we can put arguments into various buckets in order to categorize them for sorting purposes, it would be a mistake to put them into buckets so that you can dismiss an entire bucket.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
I can't wait to see Erica again at Tina this August.
Yeah. Erica's great on everything that she's in. I don't miss a single thing that she puts out.
Yeah.
And so can I ask one more question, or would you like to move on? Either way, I got a lot of great information. I greatly appreciate the feedback from both of you about where my errors are here.
Let's say both. Yeah, I'd like to move on, and I'll let you ask her one more question.
Okay. My last question is, I think the reason I'm trying to figure out how to address these philosophical arguments, because at the end of the day, I'm not super interested in philosophy. And when I get into these conversations about the existence of God and people resort to philosophy, to me, it feels like they're really kind of going about what I feel is a useless approach that's not really getting us anywhere. And it ends up being, word vomit that doesn't really do anything useful. And so how would you recommend, when I'm getting into that situation, I address that without just dismissing it out of hand, saying, well, I don't want to talk about philosophy? Because I feel like, how can I address the problems with using philosophy to prove God in that way? Or is there just no way to do it?
It's not a problem.
If it were
You're
me,
objecting. Oh, go ahead.
All I was going to say is if it were me and I had a problem discussing about things like that philosophically, then I would tell them that right off the top. I don't see the point in it, or whatever it is. you can philosophize all you want all day long about something that isn't provable, and to me, it's pointless. So if that's and you probably feel the same way, which is why you're probably not into the whole philosophy of
that is
whether or
how
not.
I feel.
Like, I'm an atheist too, right? So I believe that the discussion of whether or not a God exists is pointless these days because, in my opinion, he clearly doesn't. If you look at the state of things, so I think it's pointless. So you could just tell people that.
The other thing with regard to philosophical arguments is there is no problem with philosophical arguments. An argument is an argument. All of them are either are valid and sound or they're not. And so while you don't want to dig in on the philosophy and the things that you consider perhaps confusing or navel gazing or whatever else, there are some things where it's not just a matter of pulling up a graph and measurements. I would recommend that you spend some time. You don't have to spend a ton of time. Go look up the philosophy of science, because if you're setting philosophy aside because you want more scientific, more empirically evidence-based arguments, you can't have any of that without philosophy. None of this exists without logic and reason and epistemology and fundamental ideas like falsification and testability. None of that exists without philosophy. It's not just, it's not what you hear from everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. The universe began to exist, and therefore the universe has a cause for its existence. And that cause must be outside of space and time and capable of this and capable of this and capable of this. It's not that. And if you dismiss philosophy at its core, you have no grounds for reason at all. You can't make a reasoned argument. You can't make a scientific argument. Whether or not we even have access to truth is seriously debatable, because your brain, like mine, assuming you exist and you're not a figment of my imagination, creates an internal model of reality based on what we perceive as sense data. And our internal model of reality is not perfect. And so figuring out which parts of it are broken and which parts of it are most likely accurate requires the scientific inquiry, independent confirmation, peer review, all of those things. But the only reason we know that's what it takes to be most reliable is because we had philosophical arguments and discussions examining theoretical or hypothetical models of the world to find out what leads most likely to truth and what doesn't. But if you don't want to have any argument or listen to any argument that you think is going to be, air quotes, philosophical or whatever it is that is outside of your interest and expertise, don't have them. You don't owe anybody an explanation or an argument. You can say, I get that you guys want to engage on these things at this particular level. I don't, because I find it boring, or I don't grasp it, or I don't want to think about it. When you get solid evidence for a God, come talk to me. Until then, I don't give a shit. That's fine.
Yeah, and also I'm not trying to dismiss philosophy. So don't get me wrong, because philosophy is very important, especially in what I do for a living. I'm in the world of chemistry, and a lot of that requires some philosophy on ethics and stuff like that. So there are good reasons for philosophy, and of course, I think arguments for things that we can't prove are kind of pointless. But there are things that we do need it for, and very much so.
Yes, I agree with that, and I feel like perhaps I was generalizing all of philosophy when I was doing that and making myself sound worse than I intended. But
you're in good
I'm not going
company.
to try and defend myself for my flaws here.
You're in good company, because I have friends who do shows on this network who are annoyed and couldn't give a shit about any argument that they perceive as philosophical mumbo jumbo, because one of the things is it requires a lot of time spent thinking and reflecting on things that are really difficult to grasp. And I don't mean that in a sense of smart dumb, but I mean they are not the way we normally think about the world. You know, there are people who like sports games, there are people who like action games, and there are people who love abstract strategy games. Somebody can like all of them, but probably the people who, I'm going to bet, the people who like abstract strategy games are definitely going to be more interested in digging in on philosophical arguments than someone who only likes sports games. And yet it's all games and all fun.
Mm-hmm.
There's my generalized dismissal. Cool. Yeah, I just
really
dismissed everybody who played FIFA 2025 or whatever. But thanks, Flabbergasted. We'll see you later. It is.
I like those abstract games myself.
Yeah, I play chess all the time. I sometimes play chess during the show. I have a bunch of board games downstairs, and many of them are abstract strategy games. There's an entire series of abstract strategy games like GIF and others that were part of a project. They're really interesting. And it turns out those games may in fact be broken, but you don't know until you keep playing them. And there's a game called TAC, T-A-K, that originated in a fantasy series of books, and somebody made the game real. And I think it's one of the most brilliant abstract strategy games I've ever played. I love playing it. I don't get to play it very often, but I love playing it. All right. We got a couple of atheists here. Rain is calling from China, pronouns she, they. Rain, how are you?
A little sick, actually, so my voice is a bit messy. Sorry about that. How are you, Matt?
Oh,
I hope you feel better.
Tired, stupid. I was calling myself stupid, not you. But go ahead.
So I have a friend. She's one of my oldest friends. Like, I'm an atheist, and as long as I've known her, she's been one as well. But she went through a series of very traumatic medical situations. And afterwards, she became really invested in Reiki and went on a whole pipeline down to like studying. Oh my God, yeah. She studied like to become a Reiki master, and then like went into Kundalini and is now a Kundalini master apparently, and is doing like Kundalini and Reiki healing sessions and like awakening sessions. And she recently moved back to China, and I spent 4 hours with her, and the entire time it was like I was talking to a different person, and I don't know how to help her because I've tried finding information about this, but all I can find is articles saying like, oh yeah, Kundalini hasn't been debunked, and even infidels.org only seems to have 2 articles about it, and it's like one is just secular spirituality, which really doesn't go into much about it, and then the other one mentions it once. So I don't know how to talk to her about it because she is fully convinced that this is real, and she talks about like your higher self, and she had a whole conversation with me about how the Egyptian god Thoth has a big ego because he messed with the Emerald Scrolls and convinced the world that we have 7 chakras when we actually have 15. But apparently that was like what was supposed to happen. This is the kind of conversation I have with her, and I don't know how to talk to her about it to make her realize that this is not real.
Well, I could say from personal experience, I kind of fell down that rabbit hole in my probably late 20s, early 30s of the whole pseudoscience woo nonsense that I call it now. I believed in chakras at one time. I believed in that Reiki was a real thing because I believed you could move your energy around using whatever the hell it was. I can't even remember. Probably blocked it out. But there are lots of resources out there that you can go to that will tell you all about these things, why they are potentially harmful, and why, and possibly you can lead your friend to some of these resources. And I can't think of any off the top of my head, and I know I have a list of them somewhere too, but I'm not going to scramble looking for it. But there is potential harm that can come from this, because what she's basing all of her experience on as a Reiki master or whatever is anecdotal evidence. So there's
Yes,
nothing
exactly.
solid that she can verify empirically. It's all just, well, you did the session on me and it's been a week and I feel great, so that's the kind of confirming stuff that she's going to hear from her so-called patients, etc. But I will try to find these websites for you. So if you want to get in touch with me, I can give you some links. If you want to, that is, you can reach me at 604atheist@gmail.com.
And I have some.
Let me just write that down.
Yep. 604atheist@gmail.com. And when you get that written down, I have some thoughts on this, because I think you're going to find that the best path forward is going to be the worst path forward. And what I mean by that is, if somebody comes to me and says, I'm a Reiki practitioner, or I'm doing Kundalini healing, my first question is, what is it that you claim you can do? And how can you show that it's true? Because even in your messaging about what they said, you said Kundalini hasn't been debunked. But that is a complete shifting of the burden of proof. We shouldn't believe things until they've been debunked. We should reserve belief until they've been confirmed. And so whether or not it's been debunked is irrelevant, because it may be unfalsifiable. There may be no way to test it, and therefore there's no way to debunk it. If they can't tell you, here's what I do, and here's how you can verify that I've actually done it, then they are making an untestable claim. And that to me is the best path of pointing it out. But I can tell you from experience, people who are into this stuff, not only will that not change their mind, it will piss them off.
Yeah.
And it will make them dig in deeper, because they're going off what they feel about it. I feel better when I do this, and so do the people I'm interacting with. And how could this possibly be a bad thing? And maybe it's not all that bad. But if they can't demonstrate that they're doing what they claim they're doing, then they are deceiving and or being deceived. And if at any point somebody goes in for Reiki healing or Kundalini healing or whatever, instead of actual medication for an issue, instead of the best available scientific advice, you may in fact be doing harm. It's like astrology. People go, oh, it's just harmless. It's harmless fun. It is, until people take it seriously and start basing their life around what they think the stars say. Or, I've had a bad back for a while now, and I spent a couple of days basically sitting in my recliner with a heating pad on because I damaged it. It's starting to get a little better, but I'm definitely going to need therapy and medication, and it could get bad enough where I need surgery. But if I bought into, these sorts of healing things, I could then actually wind up making my back worse by relying on something that has demonstrated no efficacy. And instead of saying Kundalini hasn't been debunked, we should say, and this is just as true, Kundalini has not demonstrated its efficacy.
Yep.
And if it's simultaneously the case that it hasn't demonstrated its efficacy and it hasn't been debunked, nobody should have cause to believe that it's actually true and real.
Here's a fun little quote that I've actually marked a little while ago that you should take, because Kundalini and Reiki are both practices in energy healing. So energy healing is available at many first-rate academic health centers, but behind the veil of testimonials lie questionable publications and the fantasies of a starving man. So keep that in mind.
Thank you, because one of the bigger concerns that I have is the fact that she's using this to, like, quote unquote heal people, and she charges like exorbitant amounts of money for it too. Like, she told me how much she charges the other day, and I was shocked.
I should start doing this.
It's concerning me. Well, I mean, like, I think it was like $999 for an early bird special or something. So yeah.
Wow.
But it really bothers me that she's potentially, like, you know, she's scamming people with this thing, and whether or not she intends to. So it's very true. Like what Matt said about the fact that she might just dig her heels in deeper is like, that's scary to me, because the conversations I've had with her really make me think that she thinks what she's doing is real. Like she says that when she does these healings to people, it's like she can feel she's pulling snakes out of them, which she says are like demons, but they're not really demons.
Well,
and
now
she
I
can
hate
feel
her.
them wriggling in her hands. Can't see them, and then she asks dragons to burn them away. So people say like they can smell
Oh my
smoke.
God.
And yeah.
How dare
this is
she?
the conversations we have.
How dare she demonize snakes like that?
Yeah, really.
For right?
And dragons,
Why would you want to hurt a noodle? They're so cute.
They're my favorites.
Ugh.
All right, Rain. Well, just remember that the things that the things that rational people understand should change minds don't always, and they don't always change even rational minds, because none of us are perfectly rational. We've all got our biases and baggage. And it may be the case that if you find out that the type of healing she's doing would be something that you might benefit from, and say, hey, I'm interested in this healing that you're offering, how could I tell if it works or not before I buy into it? Before I pay for a service or whatever?
Well, she did offer me a free service to, like, you know, according to her, give it a try. So
yeah, it'd
maybe
be worth it.
Use that as a way to talk to her about it.
As long as it's not something that's going to cause you any physical harm, there's no problem at all. You know, it's like people that say, oh, Matt, would you be okay if I laid hands on you and prayed? And I'm like, if you wash your hands beforehand, I will sit here and entertain your put your hands on me and pray for me thing. It's been done many times. It's like, people think I'm offended because they pray for me. No, I've had people praying for me and against me for 56 years, maybe longer.
I could tell you one of the sites I remember now was a McGill University site where it's the Office for Science and Society that has a whole thing on energy healing and stuff like that you can check out.
All right, Rain, we're gonna move on. We got a couple other calls. Yep, McGill University.
McGill University. And it's .ca,
Thank you.
not .com. No problem.
All right. Thanks, Rain. Go feel better.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, guys.
You probably feel better without the Reiki healing, but
I guarantee you will. If you take the proper medication and get rest.
We've got Sam calling in from Texas. Pronoun is male. Wants to talk about the reason we have faith and believe in Jesus Christ. So obviously a theist, Christian. Sam, how are you?
Hey, greetings. How we doing?
Good.
You know, you're speaking about being rational, and I think being rational is thinking like adults. And I think one way of the argument on your guys' behalf is more, and this isn't to be disrespectful in any way, but more like elementary. And the fact of wanting proof, like, I want to see your God. Where's your God at? Then show me your God.
Hey, Sam?
Here we go.
God is more than just that.
Sam?
Okay.
Sam, when have you ever heard me say that?
By your evidence, by where's God? We want to see God, and where's he
Sam,
at?
Sam,
Sky
those are literally things that you are now creating a fictional cartoon of us. What I want is an evidence-based reason to believe what so many other people believe, to believe what I used to believe. You do realize that I was a fundamentalist Southern Baptist Christian studying to be a minister. I used to believe this stuff, and now I don't, because I realized that I didn't have good reason. So if you have good reason for us to believe, you could share it and you could do it without mocking, because 1 Peter 3:15 requires you to give the reason for the faith that's within you, and to do it how?
By just sharing my testimony. Doesn't
No, that's not what it says. Are you not familiar with
First Peter? Evidence.
Are you not
one
familiar with
translation says? Go ahead.
See,
no, all I'm telling you is that only one translation says to show with evidence. All the other translations just.
I'm sorry. Are you after mocking us and talking about being an adult? Are you going to count? Oh, yes, you were. You were mocking us.
What I'm doing is I'm being rational because
what you're doing is you're fucking interrupting me while I'm talking. So I'm going to mute you. And I would like to know, you're calling in to give the reason for the faith and belief in Jesus Christ. Now, 1 Peter 3:15 specifically commands you to be ready at all times to give an answer, to be ready at all times to give a reason. All of this is based on the word logos, which is also potentially synonymous with evidence, colloquially speaking. You are commanded to give an answer for the reason, for the hope that's within you, and to do so with, when I said how, I was seeing if you knew the second part of the verse, which you clearly don't, meekness and fear. So if you're just going to do the what translation says evidence, I really don't care. I thought we could have an adult conversation, which is why I started this show, but you've just been smug and dismissive and cartoonish from the beginning of this call. So let's try this. I'm going to take you off mute in a minute, and Neil and I will listen to what Male has to say to us. And by the way, male isn't a pronoun. So you already started off. You already started off on the worst foot. I was just going to go with malicious compliance. When I take you off of mute, you may then tell us what reason you think we should believe in Jesus. Anything other than that, any whining about how you weren't allowed to talk, any mocking about who's going to be an adult or whatever, anything other than here's the reason I think you guys should believe in Jesus will end this call immediately, despite the fact that you are the last caller and the only theist remaining here. I hope that that's clear. So I'm going to take you off mute, and then you need to tell us the reason you think we should believe that Jesus Christ is real and divine. Thank you. I'm now taking you off mute. It is your turn.
You see, Jesus Christ is a lifestyle. And so when you live that lifestyle, then you start having the connection with God. And you feel the connection with God. But you got to understand what Jesus Christ is saying. And when Jesus Christ speaks, he speaks
you
truth,
do.
because everything he says makes sense. So, for instance,
I've never heard him
says
speak.
You cannot worship. So whenever you can, whenever quotes means someone speaks. The Bible is full of quotes of Jesus Christ. That means that it was recorded in what he was saying.
No, the Bible is full of things that people say are from Jesus. I've not heard Jesus say anything at all.
Were you there?
No, I wasn't. Were you there?
Was I there? No, I wasn't. I have
Cool.
belief.
So I'm going to mute you now because we're both in agreement that we weren't there. I don't believe that you are sincere at all, because you are using the cartoonish apologetics entirely, right down to were you there? I think you're a prank caller with your little male pronoun. And when we want to know why we should believe in God, and your statement is, you see, Jesus Christ is a lifestyle. No, it's not. Jesus Christ is purportedly an actual extant being that is divine, not a lifestyle. If you want to call in and say, I have a lifestyle that I call Christianity, or I call Jesus because I believe the things in the Bible were actually said by Jesus and true, that's fine. But we're asking for the reason why we should believe that the things that you believe are true are in fact true. Last chance to try. Why should we believe that what you say is true?
Well, to correct your statement, Jesus Christ says that right now I am with.
Okay. I don't know how you think this is going to go. You don't need to correct my statement. I quoted you. The entire thing is live and recorded. When I ask you a question, You need to answer that question because you've already demonstrated that you are not capable of having an honest conversation as an adult.
Yeah.
Neil and I would like to know what reason you can give us to believe that you are correct about what Jesus said. Please do that.
You love your mute button, but that's okay.
No, it's not okay. You're done. I warned you.
Yeah.
I have 0 fucks left to give to dishonest people who want to call in and pretend like they're the adults, and those of us seeking evidence for your bullshit claims. And they are in fact bullshit. Not all Christianity is bullshit. Yeah. Not every claim about it is bullshit, but your particular one, Sam, is bullshit. Jesus Christ is a lifestyle, and he says this, and you have no evidence that Jesus ever even existed, let alone said any of the things that are purported that he said. You have no evidence to support the notion that what is recorded is what he actually said or what he means by it. But as someone who was a Christian, Jesus Christ isn't a lifestyle. That's not in any way Christianity. And when you call in and say that your pronoun is male, which isn't a pronoun, and that you think we're engaged in childish stuff, when I'm the one being invited to debate at Oxford Union and doing debates with apologists all over the planet, and you're calling into a show to act smug and superior while failing to take your opportunity, failing to do what you are commanded to do in your Bible, and actually put up a proper defense. That verse is the cornerstone of all apologetics. I was a better Christian than you when I was a Christian, and I probably still am, or could pretend to be, a better Christian and a better defender of Christianity than you could even attempt to do when given multiple opportunities. You should feel really embarrassed, Sam, and don't call us back until you ask God what he wants you to say. Mm-hmm. When you find out what God wants you to say to us, call us back, because that's what we will use to determine both your credibility and God's.
Also,
sorry, Neil.
I would like to say, no worries. I would like to say, I'm pretty sure that most of the people that I know, who are majority of the people I know actually are atheist or agnostic. I have a few believers in my life, but most of those people probably live a much more Jesus-like lifestyle than many of the Christians and other theists in that vein do today. So, I mean, from what we've seen, Jesus would not behave that way, according to what he has been described as.
Arden, something's... wow. I was just asking Arden for the very thing that she had already sent me. Our internal link for my super chat list.
Boss level, man.
Oh, the voice of God.
Also, I don't know if you saw one caller slipped in. There's some more on the line.
Yes, I just put them live right when you said also.
Cool.
Here we go. Final caller for today. Bernie's calling in from Tennessee, doesn't care about pronouns, and is a deist, wanting to know if we'd consider precognition evidence for the supernatural. Hey, Bernie, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. And I'd like to say I really... Do what?
Do you have examples of precognition?
Okay. I love your show, and I love how you ask for evidence, and I'm going to get right to it. I personally have had multiple precognitive experiences. I've got up in the mornings, presented those dreams to my mates and my mother, and we wrote them down, and then they've occurred in future time events. So, but to say to you, here's my physical evidence, I do not have it. But my question for you was, if you was to have some precognitive occurrences, dreams that you actually had, and then months later or years later, you walked into those dreams just the way you had dreamed them, would that give you some suspect that there may be something supernatural going on?
No.
Yes, but only because part of my brain is irrational. The fact that I had a dream and it appears to come true or or accurately mapped to something that happens later doesn't tell me how or why I had that dream, whether it's supernatural in origin or whether it is natural in origin and my brain is just good at making predictions.
Yeah, and I would say that it's quite possible. I would say, Bernie, that it is quite possible that you having these dreams, however many of them there were, that you subconsciously may have made whatever it was happening in your dreams come to fruition just by being in certain places at certain times and doing certain things too. Because that is also a possibility of it seeming like your dream came true.
And that sounds realistic from that point of view. However, I have always had this trouble. I mean, I started out for years, I was a Christian, so I always believed in free will. So when I had this last one, I was determined to prove that free will does not exist, and I was going to change the dream. And after I had walked into what was the dream and the situation, I was determined I was not going to let it play out the way I had dreamed it. And the whole goal was I was afraid someday I would have one of these precognitions and it was something to do with my children and something bad could happen. And I didn't want that to happen. And so at this point, I'm like, I will change and prove that there is no such thing as free will. And as the dream played out, I wasn't able to change the dream. So
Bernie,
it really frustrated.
Bernie, let's say you have 10 dreams. What percentage of them come true?
Good question.
Out of 10 dreams, probably none, or maybe none. Yeah, none. I mean, I've had, I've only had, I'm 70 years old, and I've only...
Bernie, wait, I'm saying out of what you think are prophetic dreams, so 10 prophetic dreams, what percentage of those come true?
I've had 3 prophetic dreams. They were all true. I'm not understanding what you mean.
So that's 100%. So can you give an example of the prophetic dream that you have that you tried to stop?
Just tell you the dream? You mean what happened and why
if you want,
able to stop it?
Bernie, I'm not trying to pry into your private life. If you didn't, oh my God, would you let me finish? I'm not trying to pry into your private life, but if you're willing to share the dream, I'm willing to listen to it.
Yeah, I'm willing to share it. I just thought you would want me to do something as fast as possible, and I don't want to do that. So,
I would like for you to do it as quickly as possible, but go ahead.
Okay, so as quickly as possible. I had the dream 2 months later, and here's the dream. I dreamed that I walked in this door and I smelled something strange, didn't know what the smell was. I immediately had to turn up these steps, walk up the steps, and I was on a corridor. I had to walk down this long corridor, overlooking people down on the floor on both sides working, and I walked into this room. And as I was doing this, I was carrying these boxes, and I was soaking wet, sweating, and that's all the dream was. That's it, carrying these big, heavy boxes.
Did you find out when this happened? Okay. When this happened, did you find out what the source of the smell was?
Well, now that was the dream. So, that was all the dream was. Now, 2 months later, I get a call from the company.
Bernie, you told me the dream. The question I have is, oh my God, Bernie, wait. You told me the dream.
Hold tight.
You dreamed that you walked in a door, you smelt something strange, you turned up the steps, you walked down a corridor overlooking people below, you walked into a room carrying boxes and were sweaty. That is the entirety of the dream. When this when this happened, when it actually happened, not the dream, when the dream came true, did you find out what the smell was?
Yes. It was oil from drills and lathes.
Bernie, if you found out what the smell was, then the dream wasn't complete, right?
Wasn't complete.
Like in the dream, in the dream, you didn't find out what the smell was, but in reality, you did.
Correct.
Okay.
2 months later, yes.
Okay. So
Now,
when the dream happened, you walked in a door, you smelt something, you turned up the steps, you walked down a corridor overlooking people on both sides, you walked into a room carrying boxes and sweaty. All of that, each one of those things happened in reality, correct?
well, here's the part that makes it really strange about the not being able to change and not have free will, because I now believe I don't have free will. Yes, to answer your question, that all happened, but not on the first time I went to this building and found this and walked into the dream.
Oh my goodness.
I smelled the oil. I walked up the steps. I walked down the corridor. I saw the people working, but I was not carrying big boxes. Okay. I had been called there.
So your prophetic dream wasn't a prophetic dream after all then, right?
What?
I said, so your prophetic dream was not actually a prophetic dream after all.
You weren't carrying boxes.
Sure it was, because you're not letting me finish. That was the first time I entered the door. That's the first time I entered the door. Now, I go in, I talk to the personnel manager, I give him my sales pitch about what I'm offering to sell. He's like, oh, we're not interested in that. We just wanted to buy some hats. We don't want no jackets. He said, but I like it. He said, I've never had a salesman come and tell me that he was going to sell me something from a dream. So we go to the president of the company. He says, I like your program. Let's do it. Okay. 3 weeks later, I'm loading up all these big, heavy boxes. And I tell myself when I left there, I've made the sale, but I do not want to carry these boxes. I will prove to myself that I don't know how I've had a dream out of space and time that's put me into this building, but I will prove to myself that I have free will, and I will take a dolly and I will load these boxes and take them down the corridor with a dolly. Okay, so long story short, I load up the van. I've got 30 boxes. The van's packed full of these big, heavy boxes. I get a phone call. I take the call. I forgot the dolly. I get to the building. I open up the truck. I'm like, oh my God, I forgot the dolly. No big problem. I'll go in and get one from them. I go to the personnel manager and he says, sorry, but we don't have one. You're going to have to carry the boxes. Now, on the second trip there, I am completely still in the dream, and I carry these boxes one at a time down this long corridor. I'm soaking wet, sweating. When I get done, I go out in the van and I say, I don't believe in the Christian God, but if there is a God, yeah.
Stop. Okay. Bernie.
Yeah.
Once you realize they didn't have a dolly, why did you carry the boxes up there instead of turning around and walking back outside to prove that you didn't have free will?
I had made the sale. Okay, because he said there was no dolly, and he's telling me I have to carry him. Now, I've just made a sale of, I don't know, $15,000 worth of merchandise.
Tough shit.
And at that
Tough shit, Bernie. If you're going to prove whether or not you have prophetic dreams and whether you have free will, you don't fucking carry those boxes up. You gave up.
You're right. Hindsight, I gave up because at that point I'm like, okay, I have no dolly. I'm an hour away from the office, and he says I've got to carry him. And at that point, you're right. I agree, but I would say I gave up. That's why when I left the building, I sat down in the van and said, if there's a creator sustainer, please do not allow me to ever have another prophetic
Bernie, stop.
Because Bernie, I was not able to change
Bernie, stop. I don't give a shit about that. Listen.
Okay.
Oh my God. Okay.
Okay.
Your prophetic dream, what you had 2 months before there. When and where did you write it down, and who saw it beforehand?
I did not write it down, but when I woke up, I told the whole dream to my wife and shared it with her. So when
you had a dream, you had a dream, and when you woke up, you told your wife the dream. How many times have you woke up and told your wife the dream?
A lot. Usually not the sexual ones, but most of the other ones.
Oh my fucking God. Okay, Bernie. I'm done.
Bernie,
Neil, go ahead.
I want to know why you think it's prophetic. You're talking about ordinary, everyday things that millions of people do every single day on the regular. if they're delivery people or if they're business people and they have to make deliveries themselves. Like, people do this all the time. I don't understand why it's prophetic. You had to carry boxes upstairs.
It was
any idea how many times I've had to carry boxes upstairs?
But did you have it? Did you have it in a dream? And did you have it in a dream?
I used to dream about work all the time. I didn't consider it to be prophetic.
I don't know why you went there twice.
Like,
if I had a dream, if I had a dream about something and I went in and I saw the building and I really wanted to prove that I had free will, I'd have left before I talked to the president and made a sale that made me come back.
Well, my initial plan wasn't to try to stop to see if I had free will. I was there to make a sale. That was the initial plan. Okay.
Cool.
It ended up.
How many of your dreams have not come to true, Bernie?
He said 100% of prophetic.
I'm hearing.
No. I said I've had three what I consider prophetic dreams. Two.
Right.
Only three in my lifetime. I'm 70 years old. Now, two of them involved me personally. Right. The first one did not involve me, so I would call that.
Besides all that, Bernie,
oh my
we're
God.
getting away from the topic here. Okay, understand something. You've had 3 dreams out of the possibly thousands that you've had in your life that you consider to be prophetic. What you're doing is called the hits and misses fallacy. You're only counting the dreams that seem to have come true and forgetting about all the ones, the other dreams that you've had that could potentially be a real life situation that you're discounting.
A hit and miss.
Understand what I mean?
I guess I'm not.
It's called the sharpshooter fallacies. It's called the sharpshooter fallacy. If you take a machine gun and spray a wall with it and then go up and draw a circle around 3 bullet holes and claim that you hit the target, you are ignoring all of the other dreams you've had that might have been something that come true. You're only counting the ones that seem to come through as prophetic dreams. And if you've been waking up and telling your wife all kinds of dreams, if there are any others that could have come true, like, are you telling me that there are only 3 dreams that you've ever had that could have come true in the future?
I've only had 3 dreams where I dreamed of something in the future. Yes. The first one, I was down in the Ohio River.
You're full of shit.
No, I was down in the Ohio River.
You're full of shit.
And
you're full of shit. You are full of shit. You are gullible. You are gullible and full of shit if you think in your 70 plus years you've only ever had 3 dreams that could possibly tie to future events. You are lying to us and or yourself.
That come out specifically in detail as I saw them in the dream.
No, sir.
I've only had 3.
No, sir. Now you're proving my point because now you're saying only 3 that come out in specific detail. You are picking your fucking hits and ignoring all the misses and writing them off.
Well, yeah, I agree. I'm picking the hits that were clearly in the dreams that I related to other people.
Go look up the sharpshooter fallacy you just admitted to. You are saying that in your entire life there are only 3 dreams you've ever had that could be predictive of the future, and that is absolute bullshit.
Not predictive, they actually occurred.
You don't get to look at the ones that occurred. Bernie, shut up. You don't get to look at the ones that occurred and claim those were the only prophetic dreams. You have to list every dream that was potentially prophetic and then count up how many of those came true, which is why when I asked how many you've had, you should have said, I don't know, thousands in my 70 some odd years, but 3 of them came true, in which case instead of a 100% hit rate, you'd have a 0.005% hit rate. So no, Bernie, you have not presented evidence of the supernatural. And even if you continue to have prophetic dreams that come true, you will not have shown any evidence of the supernatural. The supernatural
I agree.
Oh my, never mind.
I'm with you 100%. I'm with you 100% on that.
Goodbye, Bernie.
All right.
Hey, Matt, I had a couple of dreams that came true.
I don't even remember my dreams 99% of the time.
Yeah,
it's a source
of it's actually that case.
It's a source of frustration for me because other people will talk about their dreams, and I'm like, yeah, I know I dream, because sometimes I'll wake up during one and it'll be kind of there for a minute, and then but I can't remember it.
Yeah, it fades away. I'm finding that happens a lot more to me as I get older too. They used to stand out, and I occasionally have one that stands out, but all they are dreams. People, they're trying to figure out why we dream what we dream.
It is watching Bernie misrepresent the facts of this and fail to understand when I was like, what percentage of your prophetic dreams have come true? I don't know what you mean. Okay, percentage means per 100. What portion of? And so how many prophetic dreams have you had? I've had 3. And they all came true? Yes. But he's only counting 3 because that's how many he thinks came true. He's ignoring any others that could have been. It's like saying, how many lottery tickets did you buy? Well, I bought 3 that won. Okay, how many other lottery tickets did you buy? Well, yeah, but those didn't win. Yeah, yes, I know, but how many other? Well, I've probably got thousands of lottery tickets. Okay, well, when those 3 hit, does that mean you were able to predict the numbers? It's not a prediction.
That's right.
It's so wild. I'm like,
I mean, but I play it for fun, really. Yeah,
it's insane that
same way is the right answer.
And what's weird is at the whole call started with, hey, would precognition be evidence for the supernatural? And then the first thing out of his mouth on that front was, would it give you the slightest suggestion or hint that maybe there's something that's supernatural? To which I acknowledge, yes, it would, because I'm a biased person. If I was having prophetic dreams and they came true with some detail, I'd be like, how is this happening? Is this something supernatural? And then my answer, because I'm actually a rational human being and skeptic, would be, I don't have sufficient evidence to conclude that there's any sort of causal connection. It could just be coincidence. And even if there's a reliable causal connection between, or a tie, not causal, between my dream and the events, that doesn't mean I know how or why it happened. Maybe
That's right.
My brain is just really good at predicting certain things. Maybe after 70 years selling things, maybe you've had to carry boxes a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you've been to that building or something like it before. Maybe you went to that building because it was familiar from a dream. Maybe you left the dolly. Yeah, maybe you left the dolly at home.
If there's minor details that he got right.
Yeah.
Oh, there was a coffee stain on the wall to my left, just below my shoulder, or maybe there was 2 cups on the ground that were from Disneyland. Like that would then I'd be going, oh wow, maybe there is something to this.
And then you sit here and you go, okay, how or why are you having these dreams? What external force is giving you a peek into a day where you forgot to bring the dolly? Why isn't it giving you a warning about 9/11? Why isn't it giving you a warning about the stock market crashing? Why isn't it giving you a warning about the measles outbreak in Texas that has now fucking hit over 500 people? Why aren't you having dreams that are fucking useful to anybody in the world? Rather than, man, I smelled something and I had to carry a box and I was all hot and sweaty. Woo! Stand back, folks. We got a fucking profit.
And the smell wasn't even all that interesting. It was what? Burnt wires, he said, or something? I don't know.
Oil.
Oh, I smell oil every day. I think I'm kind of immune to it, but yeah.
So strange. All right.
Test that stuff every day.
We have some super chats, and we're going to read all the super chats that are $10 and over. Get your super chats in right now. Get some questions here for Neil. For me, there won't be any more questions for our callers. And I'll start. because Greg Markowski got in first again, first time in a little while, but thank you so much, Greg. It's greatly appreciated. Here's $10 of my billions. Sorry, I still have empathy. And we appreciate it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we appreciate that. And thanks for the $10.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Here's $10 from Muldred. Yeah, the empathy and the cash. $10 from Muldred T. Malcontent. The second coming happened, and you missed it. It was Fred McFeely Rogers, March 20th, 1928 to February 27, 2003. Would you like him in your neighborhood?
I'd love him in
Fred
my
Rogers,
neighborhood,
yeah.
but that wasn't the second coming.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I was a big fan of the show as a kid, so.
Fred Rogers is better than Jesus could have ever hoped to be.
Yep.
$10 from Space Barbarian. I stopped being afraid of the dark when I realized I was the kind of thing I was afraid of encountering. A late friend of mine. That's good. I thought it was a typo at first because of the way it was spaced. It reminds me of the Groucho quote of, I would never want to be a member of a club that would have me as a member.
Yeah. It's a classic. $10 from Stina. Thank you, Stina. I just got confirmation that I have a non-viable pregnancy. This is my second one. God isn't real, and if he is, he can go live in the hell he created. I'm sorry to hear that, Stina. I hope in the future you have a viable pregnancy. These kids are great. I don't have any myself that I'm aware of, but yeah, kids are great.
I like my niece and nephew a lot.
Yeah, me too.
And I like kids that I send back to other people, go back to your parents now. I've had enough fun with you. I'm genuinely, Stina, we're sorry to hear that. And I can feel your frustration in that. I hope that you come up with a solution. I have friends and family that have dealt with similar things, and the prevalence of things like PCOS, that is problematic for people who are trying to get pregnant. There are real, as we improve our general understanding and treatment for fertility issues and have advanced, more medication. We're starting to see that more people fell through more cracks than we ever imagined. And it's not just boner pills. There were things that people didn't talk about publicly. People didn't talk about impotency. They didn't talk about infertility. They didn't talk about the complications. They didn't talk about miscarriages. They didn't talk about ectopic pregnancies. They didn't talk about sexual assault. They didn't talk about all of these things, in part because a lot of this happens in particular to women who were second-class citizens and not allowed to own property or have credit cards or buy a house or any of those things. Mm-hmm. We built a society that
those topics
had us
were
keep
deified
certain
too,
things quiet.
Made evil for some reason. Like, we shouldn't talk about it. Or you should be embarrassed to talk about them. Like, they were stigmatized.
Taboo.
I think it's a word. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't talk about religion and politics, or we don't talk about that. Or the older people who would whisper things like cancer. He got cancer. And they whisper that word because it's kind of scary and offensive. And we should be saying, he got cancer. Fuck cancer. Cancer needs to be eradicated from the planet. And any God that was okay with cancer at all and wants to blame it on us for being, the hell with all that. So I really hope things turn around and that there is a viable path to you getting what you want.
Yeah. Ditto.
$10 from David Smith. Hi, Matt. I was wondering what happened to NBOSS. Are you still doing it, or is people too scared? People are too scared. We were reworking the format, and we're going to make some changes. There's still going to be debates. There was supposed to be a debate this coming weekend, but because I hurt my back and Paul had another conflict, and Arden is prepping to go elsewhere, we've postponed that for a little bit. That's Matthew, the young man from England. It's going to happen. I want to have it. He's smarter and nicer than, 84% of the people who are calling in on behalf of God. And I think I'm optimistic we can have a good debate. So Matthew, hang in there. I appreciate your patience, especially since I'm the one that has to keep postponing this because trying to organize several people's schedules for something that isn't like, a paid event with tickets and all that is a pain in the butt. But there should be more. There may be some tweaks to NBOSS, but in much the same way that we're not getting as many theistic callers, we're not getting applicants for some of that stuff. And it's not even tied to me or anybody else because NBOSS isn't me. You could be like, I want to debate Jimmy on politics. I want to debate Arden on trans rights. I want to debate, Promise on why I'm not as good a person as she is. You would lose, by the way, but
indeed you would. We got a $10 from Monkey at a Typewriter, or Monkey at Typewriter, which is still one of my favorite names. The entire notion of serving good is the first step toward bigotry. If you're ready to believe some people serve good, then some serve evil, then there's a reason to do. Well, we all know the rest. I'm not familiar with this.
Wait.
The entire notion of serving good is...
If you're ready to believe some people serve God, then some serve evil, then there's a reason to do... Well, we all know this. Yeah, there's a reason to do pretty much anything. If I'm convinced that...
God?
No. Oh, some people serve good and some people serve evil. If you think you're the side that serves good, then you can justify anything to stop evil, essentially. When you get people to believe absurdities, you can get them to commit atrocities.
Atrocities, yes, indeed.
And when you set up the divisive thing where it's good versus evil, you are definitely the good one, and you can justify almost anything to stop evil. From Weston Campbell, Neil, I've seen and heard claims that you're the Canadian Matt Dillahunty. Please respond. If you had an Atheist Debates Patreon project, I may be convinced that you are. Cool Lego streams.
Thanks. Yeah, it got a little harder to get people on the show for whatever reason. I guess people are just aren't comfortable coming on. So I started doing just a bricks beyond belief, we're calling it, and where I build something out of Lego, something cool like this here, which is the Leonardo da Vinci flying machine. So really cool stuff, science-based.
Oh, that's nice.
Or fun. Star Wars too. But yeah, there was a person that called me the Canadian Matt Dillahunty. That is true.
Well, I pity you.
Well, so I was going to say, I said, I'm really nowhere near Matt's level. He's been doing it for a lot longer than me, but I hope that I aspire to be as good as he is at some point in time.
You got too much hair.
There is a new invention called razors. But I do not have a Patreon project. I am sorry about that. But just sub to the channel, hang out in the chat, and mess around with us when I do have guests on. All right, I do the deconversion stories, and now I've got deconversion story updates where people let us know how things are going now. So,
and they're great. One of the reasons I love having Neil on is that one of the things he's done consistently is having people on to talk about their stories, and I think we need more of that out there. I want to do a quick experiment, Neil, because I think for some reason, while there's always a delay between the callers and us and between us and the studio, I think the delay between you and I is greater than normal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count in a rhythm from 1 to 5, and that will let you anticipate. And when you actually hear me say 5, just clap. Okay?
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that's a little over 2 seconds, I think, is the delay. And that, hopefully people get that. It's really bad. And I think we should be working towards some other solutions. It's inconsistent. Yeah. And it's not just a matter of us being rude over each other. And it's not just that with the callers, but it's a legit problem. But continuing on, $10.
Our stream? I don't know.
Yeah, they're constantly going to tear up our stream. $10 from Aliashana Silverbow, who completely got me today on Twitch. But what did the ocean say to the beach ball? Nothing. It just waved. Why did the fish blush? Because it saw the ocean's bottom. How do you make holy water? You boil the hell out of it. Hashtag water jokes just because. Thank you.
Oh man, those are Egyptian jokes. They Sphinx. 2/3 of a pun. PU. Okay, so $9.99 from Mean Robots Suck. Did you guys see Paula White selling blessings for $1,000? It's cool because she threw in a cross sculpture, so it's not false advertising. LOL. I did not see that, but I now have a new marketing idea.
I will bless anybody who super chats $1,000 before this show is over today. And
there you go.
I will actually also, I will manufacture a crucifix and of my own design and send it to you. The first person who puts $1,000 up there as a super chat. But there's only a few super chats left, so you're going to have to do it quick. And my birthday was just, a couple weeks ago. $10 from Weston Campbell. Less theist callers. I'd call in to defend my theism, but I'd hate to embarrass anyone in proving Fergalburgle Manergalburgle. Is Matt the son of Fergalburgle Manergalburgle? I'm just asking questions. Go fuck yourself, Jimmy. Hi, Harden.
We got all of them in there in one.
They didn't get your gay homie. Oh, you messed up. You should have got your gay homie in there.
So we got $10 from Yatrik Shah. Hey, Matt, love your work, brother. Been watching your videos since 2012. That's about when I started, too. And so glad to see you're still at it.
What took you so long? 2012? I mean, that's only 13 years ago.
It's around when I fell down the whole rabbit hole. So, yeah.
It is a wild
Matt,
process.
I used to listen to all these shows while I was at work and stuff. And one of the guys that worked with me would walk in and I'd be like, yeah, fuck yeah, that's right. And yeah, I like that. And he'd be like, what are you doing? Listening to some podcasts and agreeing with how they think and stuff. I should really be more vocal. I started saying that. And then I finally got kicked off my channel in 2018. But yeah.
It's one of those things where I think people underestimate both how cathartic it can be, especially if you're someone who is either in the process of deconstructing your belief or has never been a believer but didn't realize that there was a name and a place for you and what was going on elsewhere, to start finding these conversations are happening. And it's incredibly frustrating watching the various attempts to defend what seems to be undefendable. And
yeah,
I think our lone caller who wanted to talk about Jesus, only he didn't want to talk about Jesus. He wanted to talk about how we're just children. Show me evidence for your God. You know what that was? That was an admission you don't have any. And despite multiple attempts to give you the opportunity to present something, you presented nothing. You're genuinely bad at this. You did harm to Christianity, which is why I'm not even convinced that person's a Christian. I think that may have been an atheist troll trying to get some clickbait there. I have more respect for the average Christian trying to describe their beliefs than thinking they're going to go, well, you're just looking for evidence and really it's a lifestyle. And,
lifestyle.
Yeah, especially when your pronoun is male.
Who clearly doesn't understand what they are.
From Monkey to Typewriter. Monkey Typewriter. Oh, yeah, that's you. Go ahead.
My turn. All right. All I want now is a line of Jesus life products, gold sandals, designer robes, crown of diamond thorns, maybe sell palm piercings, start eating banquets and on one side of the table. Great to see Neil back. Oh, well, thanks. Thanks, Mikey.
It is great to see Neil back. And if we can find a way where there's not a delay, everything will get better. Skeptics and scoundrels. Hey, man. I once dreamed of doing my morning. What's that?
I said he's a scoundrel, all right.
True. I once dreamed of doing my morning routine before going to work. Then I woke up and had to do it all over again. I'm precognitive, right? True. By the way, who's in?
He says that because that thought going in my head around very similar thing.
Who's in charge of super chats that put a $5 super chat through?
Eric's on the team. He gets special privileges.
No, he doesn't.
He gets the family discount.
No, he doesn't. Although Eric can say whatever the hell he wants to me whenever he wants for free. But also, Eric, just as a reminder, I pretty much nearly quit PoE2 the other day, although I'm playing around with a mercenary right now. But what they've done to that game that I've enjoyed for the last 3.5 months has really pissed me off to the point where I brought it up in my monologue earlier. $10 from Robin Webster. I will spend 10 to say hey to awesome Neil. I may need some friends in Canada. Hello to Greg also, and Matt, Arden, and call screeners and mods. You got friends all over the place, Robin. I mean,
Robin.
As long as I got a couch, almost anybody watching has got a place for at least one night. And then when it turns out I can't stand you, I'll just...
I do not co-sign that. I do not welcome anyone watching into our house. Holy shit, no.
Well, I think if you find the house and need a place to stay because somebody's about to kill you, I'll at least help you get a place to stay. There you go.
There you go.
Can't stay on the couch because I have snakes.
Robin, you always have the ability to say hi to me in my chat anyways for free. Oh, $10 from a Krennic? Is that how that would be pronounced? Yes. Why did the tomato blush? It saw the salad dressing. Oh my goodness.
So
I would
wild.
say I'd blush more if it was undressing.
Yes. $10 from Weston Campbell. You're gay, homie. Sorry, 200 limit. Speaking of ocean jokes, how did you circumcise Moby Dick? You send down 4 skin divers. I just go fishing for the halibut. Snack on screen, please, Arden or Lizard. So we only have one super chat left, but I think if Arden was to grab one of the lepidogasters and come in, she could probably put it right on my head.
I will try, but there's a good chance that doesn't happen because they are new to us and they're still a little not trusty. We'll give it a shot.
A little skittish.
In the meantime, I'll put this super chat up because nobody's given 1,000 yet. So
we have $10 Canadian. All right. So that's what, about $2 US? Anyways, from Greg Lisk. I always make those jokes in my chat. Matt,
it's fake
please
money.
Stop misgendering the voice of Goddess Arden. Oh, I see.
When I say the voice of God, I find God to be genderless, and I think it is misogynistic to assume that God has a gender. God is non-binary and will not fit into your gender stereotypes at all.
But
I tell you,
Arden is amazing.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff going on. I don't have the schedule, but let me run through what we know is going to be happening. And that is tomorrow, there's going to be a transatlantic call-in show at 2 p.m. Central. So whatever time you tuned in for this, tune in 6 hours earlier tomorrow, and you can watch the transatlantic call-in show. If you are someone who's concerned about trans rights issues, if you've been called transphobic and you don't think you are, or you want to understand why, or whatever else, it's a perfect opportunity to call in, talk to them. You'll talk to a couple of real trans people. And I don't mean that as opposed to fake trans people. I mean that as opposed to just listening to some cis dude like me tell you why you're wrong about how male is not actually a pronoun at all. And then Sundays is the Sunday show at 2 o'clock Central and the Sunday show after dark at 7 o'clock Central. Monday's Skeptalk, where we primarily focus on skeptic issues and science stuff. And it could be anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hour show to a 10-hour show if Forrest and Erica are both on there. And then I'll be back, or Tuesday's Chewed Gum with Promise and Alyssa. And then I'll be back on Wednesday next week. Hey,
they were hidden really well. I couldn't get to them. So I brought them a stream. I'll have to settle for.
Okay, we got a snack instead. This is Citrine. She is one of our Inceptions, which is an Orange Dream dreamsicle. So Orange Dream,
beautiful,
lavender albino piebald, and
oh wow,
this is what Arden wanted to make when we first started breeding snakes, and she hit the jackpot. We got a few of them, and that's one of the best and favorite ones.
She's like the only ball python that we have that's like really treated like a full pet. So she gets the glamour lifestyle compared to everyone else.
Also,
a little spoiled.
Next week is Brian Dalton.
Yes.
And then the week after that is Promise.
Promise.
And then the week after that is Erica. All here on the Hang Up. How badass is that for a lineup? I got Neil, Brian, Promise, and Erica in 1 month. If you guys have suggestions on who else might be a good guest for shows on the line, the contact information is down below. Can't guarantee or promise anything. And if you're somebody who wants to be on the shows, there's a lot of different ways that could potentially happen. But the biggest thing is we need to see that you are technically proficient at being able to produce some content so that you have the gear and that you have some kind of relaxed familiarity with this and that we know you. That's pretty much it. By the way, that's not an announcement that we're looking for anybody. Just, I'm always open to suggestions. And boy, have I got some good suggestions lately. Neil wasn't a suggestion. He just popped in to chat and I was like, hey man, you want to do the show again? And Neil's like, yeah, I got time.
It's like, fuck yeah, I want to. Yeah, it's been a while. It's been like, I think it was maybe 9-10 months ago that I was on here with you.
Something like that. Should happen
Let's
more
not make
often.
it that long again. Yeah,
Let's do. By the way, you guys should go to Skeptic Cave and check out Let's Talk. When do you do Let's Talk?
It won't be this. I do every second Sunday, so they can have other people on to do the show as well. Nice. I'm what they consider one of the semi-regular hosts, kind of like like the old days in the AXP when you guys used to do have different hosts on all the time. Same idea. I actually do it with the guy whose super chat you see in there right now, Mr. Justin. The $10 from Yahooligan. This is just because you have Neil the 604 Atheist on. I think Matt is pretty okay too.
You're probably wrong, but I'll accept the compliment. Thank you so much. That ends our super chats for tonight. I've already gone through all the announcements. Let me just say, first of all, pleasure having you back on again, Neil. We will definitely do it again. For all of you out there, don't forget about the other shows on the network and don't forget to go to linemerch.com and patreon.com/call-the-line. But the world is getting ready to be a potential hot mess of epic proportions. We gotta rely on each other. We gotta help each other out. And even if that means you don't end up sleeping on the couch, we gotta keep communicating. Because if we don't, things are gonna fall apart and we're not gonna be able to do anything about it. Neil, last word.
Last word. I just wanted to say, if any of you would like to share your deconversion stories, you can hit me up at 604atheist@gmail.com and I'll get to you as soon as possible. All right? We have a lot of fun on the show, so.
See y'all next time.